I've been carrying this tool around for over 20 years. It's extremely useful, which most people will recognise by the words, "No, you're not borrowing it." And I've had it for 23 years because I often use the words, "No, you're not borrowing it." But I was out the other day and it was a bit icy. Fell over, straight on my arse, finished up breaking the clasp on that pouch. Difficult pouches to get hold of, and the spring clip ones are even harder to get hold of if they're normally Velcro. Of course they're expensive because, you know, Swiss. So firstly, the falling over isn't going to happen again, but I need to do something about that clasp. Try and fashion something up to replace it. I did originally want to make this out of mild steel and solder everything together, but I don't have a piece of steel that big. So it'll be aluminium again, all machined up with a pocket in the back to accept a steel staple, pretty much mimicking the design that it always was. Then take a couple of rivets, get those in and rivet that over, and install that back into the pouch and bend over that staple. Now, because the part is so small and thin, I'm going to machine it all with the material sticking completely out of the vise. The idea being that you machine it on the end of its parent metal and use the parent metal to hold it throughout all of the operations. Then cut it off at the end as a nearly finished piece. Doesn't need to be entirely that long for the rest of the operations. A bit shorter will do. I'm going to come down and plunge into that part now with a 3mm end mill, and it's supposed to be an end mill or a slot drill, but it doesn't centre itself up properly and makes a quite terrible mark in the rest of the part. That's because the cutting teeth don't actually meet in the middle, and that causes me to machine not so much of the slot out as I originally intended. It was always going to need filing up anyway, but a bit more filing than I planned for. Doesn't matter. Just took 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes, that's all. Strictly speaking, this is the only feature of the part that needs a milling machine. I've got to try and get a shallow pocket in the back of the clasp that will accept the steel staple and the rivets so that they finish up flush against the leather at the end. It's a matter of plunging in a little bit, maybe about 3/4 of a millimetre, then moving the table into a rectangle and clearing out the middle. and then a couple of holes for the rivets. That's only a 2.5mm drill. These are going to be quite small pop rivets. I'm not going to pop them, I'm going to rivet them over manually, but the holes still need to be there. That didn't turn out too badly. Need to countersink the other side of those holes using a 90-degree spotting drill. Just doing it by hand, it's too aggressive to do in a machine. I'll probably go straight through the hole if I tried that. Now it's a matter of 2 angle blocks. I'm going to cut a 5-degree feature, 5-degree angle on the clasp plate. To get it high enough up in the vise though, the 5-degree angle block's too small, so using a 20-degree block and a 25-degree block, if you put them together in the right way, you finish up with just 5 degrees left. And then tease it across to put in the angle feature. Whoops. So that's the main part pretty much made. Just need to part it off from the parent material. I could have sawn that off and filed it and this, that and the other, but cutting it off in the vise here means that I'll slot that through and both parts will stay where they are. That way you don't get any flying across the shed and basically losing it. That's the final cut there, and it's now 2 pieces. Aside from deburring and cleaning up, that's that part pretty much finished. This is an old worn out hacksaw blade from Poundland. These are really useful if you're in the cheese industry, or you need to cut a lot of wax candles down to length, something like that, but for cutting metal they're not much good. But they are useful for a thin spring steel. So I'm going to soften this as much as I can because it warms up pretty quickly, and then use that to make a strip of steel. Always good to have something with danger written on it as well. I've had conversations with engineers at work that don't believe that a chisel is a cutting tool. It's a pity they were never taught how to use one, really. But they are useful. I can tell by filing it there that that's pretty tough steel. It's what I was looking for. Mild steel would probably have been too soft for this job, and quite encouraged by how hard that was to file. Now what I'm using here is the 2 toolmakers clamps that I made a couple of weeks ago. A couple of bits of scrap steel and 4 bolts, and make yourself more tools. This wiggling device will get centered up and it will settle down, and what it will represent is the exact center of the spindle of the machine. So any drill or tool that I put in the spindle will come down in exactly the same place as that point. And then I can then use some comedy magnifying glass and things like that, bright lights, to center that point right over the center punch that I want to drill, and then I can move across and drill the other one dimensionally. It's not possible to edge find and travel on a tiny little thin part like that unless I set it up to the work piece or the clamping piece very precisely, which I didn't do. I need to make sharp, accurate bends on this little strip. It's pretty tough to bend, so it's not going to make a sharp corner, and it's going to be difficult to get it accurate, so I'm forming it around a small 12mm block. Clamp it around on all three sides and you've got some chance that it will form itself to the correct shape and dimensions. This bit here is shameful. I could have made a much better job of finishing off these two rivets. Basically left them too long. If I'd have cut them down and made them shorter, they would have peened over properly, but they didn't do that. They just bent over to one side. At this stage, I just wanted to get the job done though. You can see how much rivet material is sticking proud of the surface there. Doesn't matter, just took 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes. When I try to install this thing, I'm going to try and bend those tabs over, and to make them bend in the right place, cutting 4 little notches approximately in the right place doesn't have to be that accurate, but hopefully they'll bend where those notches are and not somewhere else. Then just cut them off with a little Dremel disc, and then make a poor choice about how I'm going to round the ends off. Shouldn't really be doing it like that, not with that kind of disc. It fits into the existing holes. Push down and bend the tab straight. And there we are. Just think of the money I've saved. Now tell me that ain't the coolest thing you've seen all week.